That morning started like any other Tuesday in our modest colonial house on Maple Street. I was Oliver Benton, 37 years old, senior account analyst for MedSupply Northeast, a medical equipment distributor that had employed me for the better part of a decade. My wife Nadine, 34, worked for the same company as a regional sales trainer, a position she'd landed just 18 months ago after what seemed like a meteoric rise through the ranks. I stood at the kitchen counter, nursing my second cup of coffee and scrolling through quarterly reports on my tablet. The morning sun filtered through our yellow curtains, casting everything in a deceptively warm glow. Nadine rushed around the kitchen like a woman possessed, grabbing her travel mug, checking her reflection in the microwave door, and muttering about being late for another training session. "Big day today?" I asked, not looking up from the spreadsheet showing declining margins on our catheter supplies. "Always is," she replied, her voice carrying that familiar edge of excitement mixed with stress. "Victor wants the Northeast team to hit their numbers before the quarter ends. You know how he gets." Victor Hale. My direct supervisor, 45 years old, married to a socialite named Sandra, and the kind of man who wore $1,000 suits to intimidate people making $50,000 a year. I'd worked under him for 3 years, watching him climb the corporate ladder with the ruthless efficiency of a man who viewed other people as stepping stones. "Don't wait up," Nadine called, already halfway to the garage. "This training might run late, and you know how these hotel conference rooms are. No cell service, so I probably won't be able to text." The garage door rumbled open, then closed. I heard her BMW backing out of the driveway, tires crunching on the October leaves that had fallen overnight. The house fell silent, except for the hum of our refrigerator and the distant sound of morning traffic on the main road. That's when I noticed it, a slim black rectangle sitting on the counter where Nadine had been standing. Her phone. The woman who treated her iPhone like a life support system had forgotten it in her rush to get to work. I almost called out to her, but the garage door had already closed, and I could hear her car disappearing down Maple Street. She'd realized she forgot it and come back, I figured. Nadine never went anywhere without that phone. But then the screen lit up. A notification appeared at the top, just a preview of a text message, but enough to make my coffee cup slip in my hand. I caught it before it fell, but coffee sloshed onto the granite countertop. The message read, "Can't wait for tonight. Did you already make up a lie for your hopeless husband?" My vision blurred for a second. I blinked hard, thinking I'd misread it, but the words remained there, glowing on the lock screen like an accusation. My hands started shaking as I picked up the phone. The message preview showed a contact name that made my legs give out. Victor Hale. I sat down hard on the kitchen floor, my back against the cabinet, holding Nadine's phone like it might explode. My direct supervisor, the man who'd approved Nadine's promotions, her raises, her frequent travel for training sessions, was texting my wife about lying to me. The phone buzzed again. Another message from Victor. "Hotel room 412, same as last time. Bring the red dress." I couldn't breathe. The kitchen walls seemed to be closing in. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, my career, crumbled in the span of 30 seconds. Nadine had been promoted twice in 18 months. Victor had personally recommended her for the regional trainer position. All those late nights, weekend conferences, training sessions in distant cities, it all made horrible sense now. My hands moved without conscious thought. I knew Nadine's passcode, our wedding anniversary. The phone unlocked, revealing a text thread between my wife and my boss that went back months. Months of planning meetups, sharing hotel room numbers, and discussing how to deceive me. "Oliver's working late again," read one message from Nadine. "He never suspects anything, too buried in his spreadsheets to notice I'm gone." Victor's response, "Good. Keep him busy. The promotion paperwork goes through next week. Then we can celebrate properly." I scrolled further back, finding photos that made my stomach turn. Nadine in lingerie I'd never seen. Victor's hands on my wife in hotel rooms I'd helped pay for through our joint checking account. And worse, much worse, were the messages where they mocked me. "He actually thanked me for approving your raise," Victor had written. "If he only knew what you did to earn it." Nadine's reply, "Poor Oliver. He thinks hard work and loyalty matter. So naive." I sat on that kitchen floor for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. The coffee grew cold in my abandoned mug. The quarterly reports on my tablet seemed laughably unimportant now. My entire world had shifted, and I was still trying to understand the new landscape. But as the shock wore off, something else took its place. Not just anger, though there was plenty of that. Not just heartbreak, though my chest felt like someone had driven a spike through it. What I felt was a cold, calculating fury that surprised me with its intensity. They thought I was hopeless, naive, too buried in spreadsheets to notice my wife was sleeping with my boss. They'd built their affair on the foundation of my supposed ignorance, using my dedication to the company as cover for their betrayal. I stood up slowly, my legs still unsteady. Nadine's phone felt heavy in my hand, loaded with evidence of a conspiracy that had made a fool of me for months. But as I looked at those messages, at the photos, at the casual cruelty of their words, I realized something important. They'd made a critical error. They'd underestimated me. I was a senior account analyst. I'd spent 10 years learning how to track financial irregularities, how to spot patterns in data, how to build airtight cases for fraud investigation. And now I had a very personal case to investigate. I opened my laptop and began to work. The first thing I did was screenshot everything on Nadine's phone. Every message, every photo, every hotel confirmation number. I saved them to a secure cloud account that Nadine didn't know about, then sent copies to my personal email. If she realized she'd left her phone and came back, I wanted to make sure the evidence was preserved. But Nadine didn't come back. Around 10:30, I got a call on our landline. "Oliver, thank God you're home." Nadine's voice sounded breathless, panicked. "I left my phone on the counter. I'm at the training center and I can't get back until this afternoon. Can you bring it to me?" "Sure," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Where's the training center again?" "The Marriott downtown, Conference Room B. But actually, don't worry about it. I'll just pick it up tonight when I get home. This session is running really long." Conference Room B at the Marriott downtown. I made a note of that. After hanging up, I called the Marriott and asked about Conference Room B. They told me it wasn't booked for any corporate training sessions that day. In fact, it wasn't booked at all. Another lie. But this one gave me an idea. I called in sick to work, something I rarely did, and spent the morning diving into company records. As a senior analyst, I had access to expense reports, travel reimbursements, and training budgets. What I found made me freeze. Nadine had submitted dozens of expense reports for training sessions that didn't exist. Hotel stays that coincided with Victor's business trips, meals for two billed as client entertainment in cities where our company had no clients. And Victor had approved every single fraudulent expense. They weren't just having an affair. They were stealing from the company to fund it. I printed everything. Bank records showing reimbursements to Nadine's account. Hotel receipts that matched dates when Victor was supposedly visiting other branch offices. Credit card statements showing romantic dinners charged to the company training budget. By noon, I had a stack of documents 6 inches thick. But I wasn't done. I drove to the Marriott downtown, the same hotel where Victor had texted Nadine about room 412. The desk clerk was a young woman named Jessica who looked bored out of her mind. "Excuse me," I said, putting on my most professional voice. "I'm Oliver Benton from Med Supply Northeast. We're doing an audit of our training expenses, and I need to verify some hotel bookings." I showed her my company ID and a printout of one of Nadine's expense reports. Jessica perked up, probably grateful for something to do. "Let me check our system," she said, typing on her computer. "What dates are you looking for?" I gave her 3 dates from the past month when Nadine had claimed to be conducting training sessions. Jessica frowned at her screen. "That's weird," she said. "These rooms weren't booked for any corporate training. They were booked under individual names, a Victor Hale and a Nadine Benton." "Same room?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "No, but adjoining rooms, and they both used the same credit card for incidentals." I thanked Jessica and left the hotel with my suspicions confirmed. Not only were they having an affair on company time, they were stupid enough to use their real names and leave a paper trail. That afternoon, I made 3 phone calls that would change everything. The first was to Dale Morrison, the head of our company's ethics and compliance department. Dale was ex-military, no nonsense, and had zero tolerance for fraud. I'd worked with him on several investigations over the years, and he trusted my analytical skills. "Dale, it's Oliver Benton. I need to file a confidential compliance report. It's about expense fraud and inappropriate workplace relationships." "How serious are we talking, Oliver?" "Serious enough that it involves a senior executive and potentially tens of thousands in fraudulent expenses." Dale's voice sharpened. "Can you be in my office in an hour?" The second call was to Thompson and Associates, a law firm that specialized in employment issues. I made an appointment for the following day to discuss my options regarding the hostile work environment created by my supervisor's relationship with my wife. The third call was the hardest. I dialed the number for Sandra Hale, Victor's wife. I'd met her a few times at company functions, a polished woman who seemed genuinely nice despite being married to a snake. "Mrs. Hale, this is Oliver Benton from MedSupply. I worked with your husband, Victor." "Oh, hello, Oliver. Is everything all right? You said worked, past tense." "I'm afraid I have some information you need to know about Victor's business travel. Could we meet for coffee sometime this week? I think you'll want to hear this in person." There was a long pause. When Sandra spoke again, her voice was carefully controlled. "I think I know what this is about, Oliver. Yes, let's meet. Tomorrow at 2, Starbucks on Main Street." That evening, I sat in our living room, waiting for Nadine to come home from her fictional training session. The house felt different now. Not like a home, but like a crime scene. Every photo on the mantle, every shared memory, had been contaminated by what I'd learned. Nadine came through the front door at 8:30, looking flushed and disheveled. Her hair was messed up in a way that suggested recent activity, and her lipstick was completely gone. "Sorry I'm so late," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "That training session was brutal, but I think we really made progress with the team." I handed her the phone. "You forgot this." "Oh my God, thank you. I felt so disconnected all day." She clutched the phone to her chest like a lifeline. "Any important calls?" "Just the usual. Work stuff." She kissed my cheek, a quick, perfunctory peck that felt like a betrayal. "I'm exhausted. I think I'll take a bath and go to bed early." I watched her climb the stairs, probably rushing to check her messages and coordinate tomorrow's lies with Victor. But I wasn't angry anymore. The rage had crystallized into something colder and more focused. They thought I was hopeless. They thought I was too naive and trusting to see what was happening right in front of me. They'd used my loyalty to the company and my love for my wife as weapons against me. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd left evidence, and I was very good at following evidence to its logical conclusion. The next morning, Nadine left for another training session, this time supposedly in Springfield. I watched from the kitchen window as she backed out of our driveway, already talking on her phone, probably coordinating with Victor about which hotel room they'd use to betray me today. My meeting with Dale Morrison was scheduled for 9 a.m. I arrived at the MedSupply Northeast building 20 minutes early, carrying a briefcase full of evidence that would end 2 careers and probably send both Victor and Nadine to prison. The building looked the same as always, a modern glass structure that housed 300 employees across 6 floors. I'd walked through these doors almost every workday for 10 years, but today felt different. Today I wasn't just another analyst coming to work. I was a man with a mission. Dale's office was on the 5th floor, next to the legal department. He was waiting for me with coffee and a grim expression. "Oliver, I've got to say, your call yesterday has me concerned. In 15 years of compliance work, the worst cases always start with someone saying it involves a senior executive." I opened my briefcase and began laying out documents on his conference table. Bank records, hotel receipts, expense reports, screenshots of text messages, photos that made Dale whistle low under his breath. "Jesus Christ, Oliver. How long has this been going on?" "Based on the evidence, at least 8 months. Possibly longer." I walked him through the timeline, showing how Nadine's promotions coincided with the start of her relationship with Victor, how their travel schedules aligned, how expense reports were submitted for training sessions that never happened. Dale studied the documents with the focused attention of a man who'd built his career on spotting corporate fraud. After 20 minutes, he looked up at me with something approaching awe. "This is the most thorough fraud investigation I've ever seen from someone outside the compliance department. You've got them clearly liable for expense fraud, misuse of company resources, violation of our workplace relationship policy, and potential embezzlement. What happens now?" "Now I take this to the board of directors and recommend immediate suspension pending investigation. Both of them will be placed on administrative leave by the end of the week." Dale paused, studying my face. "Oliver, I have to ask, how are you holding up? This can't be easy." "I'm fine," I said, which was mostly true. The initial shock and heartbreak had been replaced by a cold satisfaction. "I just want to see justice done." "You will. Trust me, you will." My meeting with Sandra Hale was scheduled for 2 p.m. at the Starbucks on Main Street. I arrived early and chose a corner table where we could talk privately. Sandra walked in exactly on time, looking like a woman who'd spent the morning preparing for bad news. She was 52, impeccably dressed in a way that suggested serious money, with the kind of composed demeanor that came from years of navigating high society social situations. But I could see the tension around her eyes, the careful way she held herself. "Oliver," she said, sitting across from me, "I appreciate you reaching out, and I think I owe you an apology." That surprised me. An apology? I've suspected Victor was having an affair for months. The late nights, the mysterious business trips, the way he started guarding his phone, but I didn't know it was with your wife. I didn't know he was betraying someone I'd met, someone who seemed like a decent person. I slid a manila envelope across the table. "I think you should see this." Sandra opened the envelope and began looking through the photos and documents I'd prepared for her. Her face remained composed, but I saw her hands tighten on the papers. "Hotel receipts," she said quietly. "Business trips that I helped him plan, thinking they were legitimate." She looked up at me. "How long have you known?" "I found out yesterday morning. Nadine forgot her phone, and Victor sent her a text message." Sandra laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Yesterday morning, and you've already built a case that would make the FBI proud." She gestured at the documents. "You're either very thorough or very angry." "Both." "Good." Sandra's voice hardened. "Victor thinks he's untouchable because he makes money for the company and because I'm too dependent on him to leave. He's about to learn how wrong he is on both counts." She pulled out her own phone and made a call. "Richard, it's Sandra Hale. I need you to file divorce papers immediately. Yes, I know what time it is. I don't care. I want Victor served at his office tomorrow morning." She paused, listening. "Adultery, fraud, and I want to go after his pension. I'll be in your office in an hour with evidence." After hanging up, Sandra looked at me with something approaching respect. "Oliver, I don't know what your plans are for dealing with this situation, But if you need character witnesses or testimony about Victor's behavior, you have my full support. Thank you. That means more than you know. Men like Victor think they can use people without consequences. They think loyalty is weakness and trust is stupidity. Sandra stood up, gathering the documents. They're about to learn otherwise. That evening, I was sitting in my living room when Nadine came home from her fictional training session. She looked relaxed, almost happy, probably thinking she'd successfully deceived me for another day. "How was Springfield?" I asked. "Productive. The team there really needed the motivation training." She sat down next to me on the couch, closer than she'd sat in months. "Oliver, I've been thinking. Maybe we should plan a vacation. Just the two of us. We haven't had quality time together in ages." The audacity was breathtaking. She was planning vacation time with me while carrying on an affair with my boss, probably using company money to fund hotel rooms where she betrayed our marriage. "That sounds nice," I said. "Where were you thinking?" "Maybe somewhere warm, the Caribbean. We could leave next month after I finish this training project." I nodded and smiled, playing the role of the naive husband for one more night. But inside, I was counting down the hours until Dale Morrison's investigation went public, and Nadine's carefully constructed lies came crashing down. "I love you, Oliver," she said, leaning against my shoulder. "I know," I replied. It wasn't a lie, exactly. I had loved her. But the woman I'd loved had never existed. She'd been a character Nadine played, a mask she wore to hide her true nature. Tomorrow, the mask would come off, and everyone would see what was underneath. Thursday morning arrived gray and cold, with the kind of October drizzle that made everything look washed out and miserable. Perfect weather for what was about to happen. I got to work early, before Nadine left for her supposed training session in Hartford. I wanted to be in the building when Dale Morrison's investigation became official, when Victor and Nadine were called into separate meetings and confronted with evidence of their fraud. The morning proceeded normally until 9:15, when I saw Victor walking toward the elevator bank with the confident stride of a man who believed himself untouchable. He was wearing one of his expensive suits, probably Italian, and checking his phone as he walked, most likely coordinating with Nadine about their next rendezvous. At 9:30, Dale Morrison's assistant called Victor's office and asked him to come to the compliance department immediately. I watched through the glass walls as Victor's expression shifted from mild annoyance to concern to something approaching panic. By 10 a.m., word had spread through the office that Victor Hale was being escorted from the building by security, carrying a cardboard box containing his personal belongings. His company access cards had been deactivated, his computer seized, and his parking pass revoked. My phone rang at 10:15. "Oliver?" Nadine's voice was shaking. "Something terrible is happening. I just got a call from HR. They want me to come in immediately for some kind of investigation. They won't tell me what it's about." "That's strange," I said, injecting just the right amount of concern into my voice. "Did you do something wrong?" "No. I don't understand what this could be about. Oliver, I'm scared." "I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. Maybe someone made an error with your expense reports or something." The irony was delicious. Someone had indeed made an error with her expense reports. She'd made dozens of them, and I'd documented every single one. "I have to go," Nadine said. "I'll call you after the meeting." She didn't call back. At noon, I received an email from Dale Morrison asking me to come to his office. When I arrived, I found him sitting with Jennifer Walsh, the head of human resources, and Robert Chen, our company's general counsel. "Oliver," Dale said, "I wanted to update you on the investigation you initiated. Both Victor Hale and Nadine Benton have been placed on administrative leave, pending a full audit of their activities." Jennifer Walsh leaned forward. "Oliver, I want you to know that the company takes these allegations very seriously. We've already identified over $40,000 in fraudulent expenses, and the investigation is just beginning." "What happens to them now?" I asked. Robert Chen answered. Criminally, that depends on what the district attorney decides to do with our findings. From an employment standpoint, they'll both be terminated for cause, no severance, no benefits continuation, and will be pursuing recovery of the stolen funds. There's something else, Dale added. We've discovered that this isn't Victor's first offense. There are irregularities in his expense reports going back 3 years involving other female employees. You may have uncovered a pattern of behavior that goes far beyond your wife's case. I felt a grim satisfaction. Victor hadn't just betrayed me. He'd been using his position to prey on female employees for years. Nadine wasn't his first victim, just his most recent. Oliver, Jennifer said, given the circumstances, we're prepared to offer you a transfer to any of our regional offices with a promotion and salary increase. We recognize that continuing to work here might be difficult. Thank you. I'll consider that. But I already knew I wouldn't be staying. This building, this company, was contaminated now. Every conference room, every elevator, every hallway held memories of my humiliation. I needed a fresh start somewhere Victor Hale and Nadine Benton had never set foot. That afternoon, I drove home to find Nadine's car in the driveway. She was sitting at our kitchen table, surrounded by tissues and legal documents, looking like her world had just ended, which I supposed it had. "Oliver," she said when I walked in, "we need to talk." I figured we might. They fired me. They're saying I stole money from the company. They're talking about pressing criminal charges. Her eyes were red from crying, her hair disheveled. I don't understand how this happened. I sat down across from her, the same table where I'd eaten breakfast 24 hours ago, while she rushed off to meet her lover. "Nadine, is there anything you want to tell me?" She looked at me for a long moment, and I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew, how much she could still lie about, whether there was any way to salvage the situation. "It's not what you think," she said finally. "What do I think?" "That I was having an affair with Victor, that we were stealing from the company." She reached across the table for my hand, but I pulled it away. "Oliver, Victor was blackmailing me. He said if I didn't sleep with him, he'd fire you. He said he'd make sure you never worked in this industry again." The lie was so audacious, so completely contrary to the evidence I'd seen, that I almost admired her creativity. "Blackmail," I repeated. "Yes. I was trying to protect you. I was trying to protect your career. Everything I did for us." I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshots I'd taken of her text messages. "Nadine, would you like to explain this message you sent to Victor? The one where you said I was too buried in spreadsheets to notice you were gone?" Her face went white. "Or this one, where you called me naive for thinking hard work and loyalty matter?" "Oliver, I can explain. Or maybe you'd like to explain the photos you sent him, the ones where you're wearing lingerie I've never seen, in hotel rooms paid for with our joint checking account." Nadine's mouth opened and closed without sound. The careful mask she'd worn for months was finally slipping, revealing the stranger underneath. "You went through my phone," she whispered. "You left it on the counter. Victor sent you a text message asking if you'd already made up a lie for your hopeless husband. I was curious what other lies you'd been telling." "Oliver, please, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. You've been having an affair with my boss for 8 months. You've been stealing from the company to pay for hotel rooms. You've been lying to me every single day." I stood up from the table. "The only thing I don't understand is why you're still trying to lie about it." Nadine broke down then, the composed facade crumbling completely. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It started as just a stupid mistake, and then it got complicated, and I didn't know how to stop it. A mistake that lasted 8 months? Victor said he loved me. He said he was going to leave Sandra and we could be together. He said he'd take care of everything. And you believed him. I wanted to believe him. Oliver, our marriage was... we were like roommates. We barely talked anymore. We hadn't been intimate in months. Victor made me feel alive again. There it was. The truth, finally. Not blackmail or coercion, but simple selfishness. She'd been bored with our marriage, so she'd decided to find excitement elsewhere, using company resources to fund her affair and my supposed naivety as cover. "Where is Victor now?" I asked. "I don't know. He's not answering his phone. His assistant said he cleared out his office this morning." Nadine looked up at me with desperate eyes. "Oliver, what are we going to do?" "We aren't going to do anything. You're going to find a lawyer and figure out how to deal with the criminal charges. I'm going to file for divorce." "Oliver, please, we can work through this. We can go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." I looked at her sitting there, still trying to manipulate me, still believing she could talk her way out of the consequences of her actions. For 8 months, she'd lied to my face every single day. She'd stolen from our company, betrayed our marriage, and mocked my trust in messages to her lover. And now she wanted to work things out. "Nadine," I said quietly, "pack your things and get out of my house." "Oliver, get out." She left that night, taking 2 suitcases and her car. I watched from the kitchen window as she backed out of our driveway for the last time, probably heading to a hotel room that she'd have to pay for with her own money. I poured myself a drink and sat in my living room, surrounded by the wreckage of my old life. Tomorrow, I'd start building a new one. But tonight, I allowed myself to feel something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. 6 weeks later, I was sitting in a coffee shop in Portland, Maine, reading the local newspaper and enjoying the kind of anonymity that comes with starting over in a new city. I'd accepted a position as senior financial analyst with a medical device company that had no connection to MedSupply Northeast, Victor Hale, or the wreckage of my former life. The divorce had been finalized the week before. Nadine hadn't contested it. She'd been too busy dealing with criminal charges for embezzlement and fraud. Her lawyer had managed to negotiate a plea agreement that would keep her out of prison, but she'd be on probation for 3 years and would have to pay restitution to the company. Victor hadn't been so lucky. The investigation had uncovered a pattern of harassment and financial fraud going back 5 years, involving at least 6 female employees. He was facing federal charges for wire fraud and was looking at serious prison time. Sandra had taken him for everything in the divorce, including his pension and their house in the suburbs. I'd testified in both cases, presenting my evidence with the same methodical precision I'd once used to analyze quarterly reports. The prosecutors had praised my thoroughness, saying it was rare to see such a complete documentation of corporate fraud by someone outside law enforcement. But that was all behind me now. I had a new job, a new apartment, and something I hadn't had in years: peace of mind. My phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment, my heart rate spiked, old habits making me wonder if it was Nadine trying to contact me again. But the message was from Dale Morrison. "Oliver, thought you'd want to know. Victor was sentenced today. 8 years federal prison. The judge said your investigation was crucial to the case. Hope you're doing well in Maine." I smiled and deleted the message. Justice had been served, but I didn't need to dwell on it. Victor and Nadine were part of my past now, a chapter I'd closed permanently. That evening, I was walking home from work when I noticed a familiar figure sitting on a bench outside my apartment building. I froze when I recognized Nadine, looking thinner than I remembered, and wearing clothes that had seen better days. "Hello, Oliver," she said as I approached. "What are you doing here, Nadine?" "I needed to see you, to talk to you." She stood up, and I could see the desperation in her eyes. "Oliver, I've lost everything. My job, my reputation, my friends. The only family I have left won't return my calls. You're the only person who might understand what I'm going through." "I understand perfectly. You're experiencing the consequences of your choices. I made mistakes, I know that, but I've paid for them. I've lost everything that mattered to me." "Everything except your freedom, which is more than Victor can say." Nadine flinched. "Oliver, I know I hurt you. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I'm asking anyway. I'm asking for a second chance. I looked at her standing there, a shadow of the confident woman who'd rushed out of our kitchen that morning 6 weeks ago to meet her lover. Part of me, a very small part, felt sorry for her. But sympathy wasn't the same as forgiveness, and forgiveness wasn't the same as reconciliation. Nadine, you didn't just make mistakes. You made deliberate choices, every single day, for 8 months. You chose to lie to me. You chose to steal from the company. You chose to mock my trust in messages to your lover. I paused, making sure she understood. And even when you were caught, your first instinct was to lie about it, to claim you were being blackmailed, that you were protecting me. I was scared. I was desperate. You were calculating. Even in the face of overwhelming evidence, you tried to manipulate me one more time. I shook my head. That's not someone who made mistakes, Nadine. That's someone who showed me exactly who she really is. People can change, Oliver. I can change. Maybe you can, but not with me and not in my life. I walked toward my apartment building. Goodbye, Nadine. Oliver, wait. I turned back one last time. How did you find me? I hired a private investigator. It cost me almost everything I had left, but I had to try to fix this. You hired a private investigator to track me down after I made it clear I wanted nothing to do with you. I shook my head. That's not someone trying to change, Nadine. That's someone who still doesn't understand boundaries or respect. I went inside and watched from my window as she sat on the bench for another hour before finally calling a taxi. I never saw her again. 3 months later, I was promoted to assistant controller at my new company. 6 months after that, I started dating a woman named Sarah who worked in the marketing department. She was honest, straightforward, and refreshingly drama-free. I never told Sarah the complete story of why I'd moved to Maine. I said I'd gone through a difficult divorce and wanted a fresh start, which was true enough. The details, the betrayal, the investigation, the systematic destruction of 2 careers remained private. That chapter of my life was closed, and I saw no reason to reopen it. But sometimes, late at night, I thought about that morning when Nadine forgot her phone. How different my life would be if Victor hadn't sent that message, if I'd never discovered their affair, if I'd remained the naive husband they thought I was. I was grateful for that message now. Not because I enjoyed the pain of betrayal or the satisfaction of revenge, but because it had freed me from a lie. I'd been living in a marriage that existed only in my imagination, loving a woman who had never really existed. The truth had been devastating, but it had also been liberating. And in the end, that was worth everything. 1 year after moving to Maine, I received a wedding invitation in the mail. Sarah and I had been engaged for 3 months, and we were planning a small ceremony in the spring. The invitation wasn't for our wedding. It was from Sandra Hale, who was marrying a retired judge she'd met during her divorce proceedings. Inside the invitation was a handwritten note. Oliver, I wanted you to know that Richard and I are very happy. Thank you for giving me the courage to start over. I hope you found the same happiness. Sandra. I showed the note to Sarah, who smiled and said, She sounds like a strong woman. She is. She deserves happiness. So do you, Sarah said, kissing my cheek. And I realized, sitting in my sunny kitchen in Maine, with a woman who loved me honestly and completely, that I had found it. The past was past. Victor was in prison, Nadine was dealing with the consequences of her choices, and I was building a new life based on truth instead of lies. I threw away Sandra's wedding invitation, not out of bitterness, but because I didn't need reminders of my old life anymore. I was focused on the future now, on the woman beside me and the life we were building together. That night, as Sarah and I planned our own wedding, I thought about the morning that had changed everything. The message on Nadine's phone, the investigation that followed, the systematic unraveling of a conspiracy built on my supposed ignorance. They'd called me hopeless, naive, too trusting to see what was happening right in front of me. They'd been wrong about a lot of things, but they'd been especially wrong about that. I wasn't hopeless. I was methodical, thorough, and very good at following evidence to its logical conclusion. And when I'd finally seen the truth, I'd acted on it with the same precision I brought to everything else in my life. The results spoke for themselves. Victor Hale was serving 8 years in federal prison for fraud and corruption. Nadine was on probation, unemployed, and alone. And I was planning a wedding with a woman who would never betray my trust because she understood that trust, once broken, could never be fully repaired. Justice had been served not through violence or revenge, but through the simple application of truth to a situation built on lies. It was the most satisfying victory of my life.